Well, everybody, I'd like you to meet Sarah Dusek, founder and CEO of Under Canvas. And Sarah and I met in January of 2017, so just a little over 2 years ago. And what she has achieved in that short time with her husband Jake is nothing short of remarkable. And I'm really eager for you guys to hear some of her journey, because I think it's a journey we all share and we can all learn from. Did you ever think we'd be sitting here on stage at the CEO Summit when we started working together?
Oh my goodness, no. I think 2 years ago, I didn't have a company that had a C-suite, didn't have a CFO, had a great cash-producing business, doing amazing things, but we were really at the beginning of a journey of thinking about scaling our business and making big happen.
Well, I've been with you through thick and thin, and I know that every entrepreneur experiences those moments where they think there's no way they're going to end up sitting here where you're sitting, having had a hugely successful exit. I'd love for you to share an experience that you had where you had one of those moments where you just thought there's no way, and also perhaps what gave you the courage and determination to drive through that.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about disasters in our business like for the rest of our time. I won't, but there's one that springs out that was sort of happened in the very early days. And as you can see from the photos, we have large-scale safari camps outside of national parks in the US and are rapidly growing our footprint across the country. We've got 8 locations at the moment. Our first major location was Yellowstone. And Yellowstone's a fairly brutal place weather-wise. It's 80 degrees in the day and 30 degrees at night. It's a tough place. But the first year we set up in business there, we were very small. We really didn't know what we were doing. We had no hospitality experience, and then we were very understaffed. We bootstrapped our company from zero, and I launched this business literally with less than $0 in my pocket, and with a lot of credit cards. Which was fairly scary and fairly hair-raising. But I remember there was one evening in Yellowstone in our first season, and a humongous storm ripped through the camp. And I sat in my car with my 2 children at that moment in time, who were then 9 months old and 3. And I looked out at this scene. And of course, this was in the days before we really figured anything out. Our tents, the storm just came through the camp and flattened it. And I was like, oh my God. I looked out and I thought, this is it. We're done. This is the end. This is over. Nobody's ever going to stay with us again. Nobody's going to take us seriously. What were we thinking? This is crazy. It's over. There is no more Under Canvas for us. The most bizarre thing happened. And in that moment, I'm thinking about, I'm going to have seriously angry guests on my hands. Where's the refund button? How do I start trying to find money for people? Something extraordinary happened, which just gave me the resilience to get back up. And what I witnessed, honestly, it was a gift from God, literally. We witnessed our guests starting to work with our staff to put the tents back together, to help them get dry bedding, clean pillows, just to start raising the thing back up from the ground. And by 11 o'clock that night, we had every single person back in their beds, clean bedding, dry tent to sleep in, and tents re-put back together. Thankfully, we have now figured out how to make our tents pretty much hurricane-proof, so this doesn't happen anymore. But in that moment, it was devastating, and we faced a choice. Do we call this quits and back off and say, oh, this is never going to work, or do we figure it out? Do we do what John did and figure out how to not put robes in the pockets? That's what we had to do, and that moment gave us extraordinary courage to press through and find solutions to problems.
I love it. Like we've all been hearing from the speakers that we've been sharing the last couple of days, it's not what happens to us, it's what do we do with it. And I know all of you can relate to this notion of what defines an entrepreneur is when you get knocked down, you just get back up again. And I love that story. That's excellent.
It was rough.
Yeah, I can only imagine. The other thing that you shared with me during our journey together that I thought was fascinating is there were times in your journey where there was a head-to-head conflict between your core values and the apparent business opportunity in front of you. And I've been super impressed the way you committed to your values even in those moments. And I'd love for you to share a little bit of that, because I think we all, they say values are tested when values are needed. It's very easy to have values when they're not being tested. It's the moment of the test. Can you share some of that with us?
Yeah, values were really interesting for us because we didn't, and I'm sure many of you in this room didn't also, but we didn't write our values down before we started our company. We started our company and figured out what our values were as we went along because we realized what was important to us. And it really wasn't, as Sheldon said, until our values were really, really tested that it gave me a moment of clarity that helped me define them and write them down. So that the rest of my company could live with them and breathe with them as we were now breathing with them. But back in 2017, as I said, we had bootstrapped our business from 2009 to 2017, which was an extraordinarily difficult era of time. And we realized if we were going to grow the business, if we were going to be in every national park in the country and beyond, we would need some financial backing to help us grow faster. So in 2017, we went out to raise money, and what I discovered as a female entrepreneur was this became a very dark period in my life. I got used to hearing a lot of no's. I got used to hearing you're not a tech company, and I got used to effectively hearing people say you don't look like me, which was very difficult. I managed to get a term sheet after about a gazillion no's to the table, which felt like an extraordinary achievement in itself. But the partner of the VC firm that I was then dealing with was a bully. And he kept throwing quibs at me all left, right, and center that basically said, this is the way deals are done, this is the way this is. If you don't like these terms, you can sling it, and if you don't take my terms, you're not getting any money from anybody. And, he basically said, if you don't do this deal with us, I will blacklist you, and I will make sure that, nothing good ever happens to your company going forward. Which was like a moment of, whoa, this is a whole nother world out here, and not a world that I really like. But it made me think, gosh, if I wasn't sure before, I am totally sure now. I am totally not getting in bed with you. But it was rough because we had a company we were on a knife edge. We were bootstrapped, cash flow positive, but resources were really short. We were always trying to do more than we had the capacity financially to do. So we were constantly on the edge, and I faced this is do a $7 million deal, which at the time felt like a lot of money. Or potentially go bust, run out of money, get so far in the red that you're not going to get out again. And it really, really challenged our values and challenged what I believed in and what I was willing to do to grow our company. Thankfully, we chose to turn them down and decided there's got to be a better way to do this. And thankfully found another great partner about 6 months later. But it was tough. It was really tough.
I know in the manuscript of your book that you're writing, and you were kind enough to share it with me ahead of time, you made a statement, I'll probably slaughter the quote, but I thought it was so poetic. You said, we refuse to sacrifice our values on the altar of success. And
Yeah.
I could tell that really resonated with your team members that I've spoken with, and that really galvanized the team about what's important.
Yeah, and I think just helped us clarify that it helped clarify what success looked like too, and helped us really define who are we, what do we care about, what's important to us, and what is the ground we build our business upon, and what are we trying to build and why.
I know you came to the CEO Summit last year, and one of the things I think you're all experiencing is the power of this shared experience is exponential. There's one thing about the work we do in our regular work together, but there's something about coming together as a community, and it just takes it to a whole nother level. And I think you shared with me there was one particular thing that galvanized with you at last year's CEO Summit that literally defined your year and defined your exit. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, Mark gave us, for those of you who were here last year, Mark gave us an amazing little glass I don't know what you call it, a statue of some kind. And on it said, "What do you want?" And I looked at that thing for like the 3 days that we were here this time last year. And I actually started to really ask myself that question. And we'd now been in business almost 10 years. And I started to think about where are we going? What is our trajectory? Yes, I'm building this company to grow it, but what is it I really want? What does success look like for my company? What does it look like for me personally? And we decided, maybe here's the number that I'm shooting for out there. I really galvanized it into a specific number, and then really realized, what would it take to do that? How do I break that down? How do I turn that into real metrics that we can focus on and really deliver on? And when we did that, I realized, gosh, maybe that might not be that hard, and maybe it might not be that far away.
I remember in those calls when that clicked with you. That was exciting.
It was extraordinary, because it suddenly made me think, I could do that. I could make that happen. Without thinking that it was 5 years away and we'd have a long, long slog. It just made me think, this number's success for me. This feels great. This feels like a huge achievement. I'm going to go out there and see if I can make that happen.
What do I want?
What do I want?
Amazing power in that.
Yeah, huge clarity just from one simple question.
I love it. John DeJulius this morning was talking about the creativity crisis. And it made me think of something that you shared with me, Sarah. One time you said that you shared this premise that the only thing artificial intelligence won't take away from us is our human creativity. You told me that even before we heard John, although now we'd say it for sure. Tell me a little bit about how do you you've kept that creativity alive in your firm, and then I'd love to hear about how do you, the business model that you have, how you do that for others.
Yeah, we realized pretty early on that we are in the experience business. And just as John talked this morning, my business is not a travel company or a glamping company. The role of Under Canvas is to create extraordinary outdoor experiences that create meaningful moments in time. And that last poignant video was so powerful, wasn't it, in terms of connecting with other human beings. And so we have built our resorts very much with this idea in mind of how do we enable people to connect, disconnect from technology, connect with one another, but how also do we help people think? How do we enable people to have experiences that take them out of the everyday, the norm, and help people to think big, because they're out in nature and experiencing a whole different world. We've seen this happen so many times with our own people, of just having people be outside. We've seen it happen with our guests. The extraordinary power of being with the people that you love, maybe even being solitary, but having a bigger experience that removes you from your day-to-day world and puts you into a very beautiful, extraordinary one. And we've seen the power of how this has been harnessed even with teams. Teams coming out to do corporate retreats, or small group experiences of bonding with each other, but having space in their lives to create and have big ideas. We are always asking, how do we keep our companies innovative? How do we think about keeping us from being disrupted? How do we do that? How do we engage creativity in our people? Because, as we heard this morning, and AI is going to replace a lot of our people. And what will make our people valuable to us is the inherent ability of creativity. So how do we stimulate that? How do we drive our people to become more creative, to be out-of-the-box thinkers? In my opinion, we take them outside. We allow people to think big outside.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that. Having grown up in Alaska, you're speaking my language. I love that. That's excellent. So when you think about what Sarah has achieved, it's not a SaaS business, obviously, and yet I think it's for context. You all should understand a couple of the components of this transaction, because it was truly amazing. The value you created through the value you're delivering through your business model is what resulted in this. And if I understand this right, the final outcome was a 25x EBITDA. Is that right?
Yeah.
So a 25 multiple. Obviously, multiple competitors seeing the future of the solid foundation that Sarah had created. And much like we talk with Rich Ballard a lot of what he did, one step at a time, and then taking an opportunity to grow it even further. Sarah's now doing that as you remain the CEO and shareholder there. But I just want to say congratulations on your amazing success.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate you sharing with the group here some of your key lessons.
It's been a wild ride, and without a doubt, I wouldn't be where I am today without the likes of Sheldon and CEO Coaching getting behind me and saying, we've got to be disciplined, this is what we've got to do, this is how we're going to do it, this is how we're going to break this down, which has been an extraordinary ride for me. But the valuation, the piece of the puzzle that, culminated with all of this really was a sense of, I didn't think big enough. And now I get to go on another journey that says, I thought about what I wanted, I got what I wanted, and achieved an extraordinary thing, but also made me realize we got a whole nother journey to go
bigger.
on. I've got to think bigger, and we've got a bigger journey to go on, which is truly amazing.
Great. Well, Sarah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
A big round of applause for Sarah.
Thank you. Thanks, Sheldon.